In the far edge of the galaxy, where cold stars burned weakly and silence ruled the empty dark, a small listening post drifted alone near a dying red sun, its panels cracked and its lights flickering like tired fireflies. Inside this lonely station, Lieutenant Aria Mendez sat at her console, expecting another quiet shift, unaware that her life and the fate of the entire galaxy was about to change forever. The stillness shattered when her screen lit up with a broken, shaking signal that repeated again and again, filled with static and fear. At first, Aria thought it was a technical error, but when she cleaned the audio, she heard something that made her blood run cold. It was the last message from the peaceful Varuan colony, a place known for open hearts and soft voices, a world that had never known war. Their desperate words trembled through the speakers. Do not fight, run. They cannot be stopped. Behind their message, Aria could hear chaos screams, metal tearing, weapons firing, and a horrible clicking sound she could not identify, something alive, fierce, merciless. She listened again, her hand shaking slightly as she realized the Varuan, gentle and wise, were begging for their lives. The message repeated, weaker each time, until it finally faded into nothing but silence. Aria stared at the dark screen, feeling a heavy pressure settle in her chest. The Varuan were not a species that used strong words. If they said something cannot be stopped, then whatever attacked them was beyond anything the galaxy had ever faced. She checked the station records and found the name whispered in old warnings, the Scariest swarm, a race of huge insect-like creatures that spread across space like a plague, consuming worlds without mercy or reason. Whole systems had vanished under their hunger, leaving behind only dust and broken stars. They did not talk. They did not take prisoners. They simply devoured. The swarm had been quiet for years, hidden in dark parts of the galaxy, and many believed they were only myths or ancient nightmares told by frightened elders. But now they were awake again, and they had found their next meal. Aria stood from her seat, her jaw tight, her heartbeat steady in the face of fear. She sent the message to High Command, adding her report and warning, but she knew the truth deep inside her heart. The swarm would move fast and the galaxy would not be ready. Most species were peaceful and gentle, trusting in treaties and soft words, not built for the kind of terror the swarm brought. But Aria also knew something else, something the rest of the galaxy often forgot. Humanity had survived storms, predators, wars, disasters, and the harshest moments of its own history. Humanity had been shaped by struggle. Pressure had made them sharp. Danger had made them clever. Hardship had made them strong. Running was not in their nature. As she stared out the window at the dying red star, she felt a fire inside her, a quiet determination rising with every breath. "Prepare the fleet," she said to the empty room, her voice firm and unwavering. Humanity would not hide. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would meet the swarm head-on, even if the rest of the galaxy trembled. And somewhere, deep in the darkness between the stars, the car's whole swarm slowly moved toward human space, unaware that they had just awakened the one species in the galaxy that never surrendered. When news of the swarm spread through the galaxy, most alien species reacted with fear, retreat, and disbelief because humans, small, soft, short-lived humans, were the only ones who stood up and said they would fight the unstoppable enemy. For years, many alien civilizations had quietly judged humanity as strange newcomers who talked too loudly, acted too boldly, and rushed into danger with a bravery that seemed almost foolish. They saw humans as fragile creatures with thin skin, delicate bones, and strangely emotional hearts. But behind closed doors, some of the oldest species whispered warnings. Do not provoke them. Their history is full of wars. Their minds are sharper than they look. Their spirits burn brighter than their bodies. Even with these warnings, nobody expected Earth to take a stand against the Carsol swarm. When Earth publicly announced that it would defend the outer colonies and block the swarm's advance, the galaxy responded with gentle pity rather than confidence. The Varuan envoy, still shaking from the destruction of their own home, traveled to Earth's orbital station and begged the human council to withdraw. Their large, watery eyes held a deep sadness as they pleaded, "Please listen. We admire your courage, but you do not understand. These creatures cannot be stopped. Not by your ships, your soldiers, or your courage. If you stand in their way, your world will fall like ours." But humans simply looked at one another, sharing a silent understanding shaped by thousands of years of surviving impossible odds. Commander Jace Relan, leader of Earth's unified fleet, took a deep breath and stepped forward. His expression was calm, steady, and warm as he placed his hand gently on the Varuan envoy's shoulder and said, "We're not planning to lose." The Varuan stared at him with disbelief, unable to understand how humans could smile in the face of such terror. When the first swarm hive ships arrived in human space, they were enormous living fortresses the size of moons. Their thick armor plates glowed with a sickly green light, and their weapons fired beams that melted metal like wax. Most expected Earth to fall within days. Instead, something shocking happened, something the galaxy had never seen before. Human ships, much smaller and weaker on paper, danced around the giant hive ships with wild, unpredictable moves. They used asteroid belts as cover, flew close enough to scrape the swarm's armor, and fired weapons with impossible precision. They fought like they were born for chaos. Aria Mendez directed tactical maneuvers from the main command ship, her voice steady and clear as she guided dozens of captains through swirling battles. Jace commanded the front lines, shouting orders as explosions lit up the dark space around him. Every ship operated alone yet moved together as if guided by one mind. The watching alien species were confused. How could humans fight so well under pressure? How could they switch tactics in seconds? How could they survive hits that should have destroyed them? What the other species saw as madness was actually humanity's greatest strength. They adapted faster than any other species. In mere moments, they changed plans, adjusted strategies, and invented new ways to fight. They understood chaos as if it were an old friend. To them, danger was not a reason to flee. It was a reason to grow sharper, stronger, and smarter. Soon, the galaxy realized something important: humans were not just brave. They were evolving even in the middle of battle. And the swarm, for the first time in its long and merciless history, had met a species that would not break, would not bow, and would not run. Humanity had only begun to fight, and already the galaxy was holding its breath. As the war stretched from days into weeks, the swarm began to unleash weapons that had destroyed countless worlds before, expecting humanity to finally break like every other species they had crushed. But every time the swarm changed its tactics, humans changed faster. When the swarm released clouds of acidic spores that melted metal, humans switched to heat-based shields within hours. When the swarm used gravitational distortion fields to twist space, human engineers reprogrammed their engines to ride the distortion instead of fighting it. When the swarm sent giant insect-like shock troops onto planets, human soldiers met them with traps, fast-moving squads, and unexpected tricks that confused even the most advanced hive minds. Watching from the safety of distant worlds, alien species tried to understand how humanity could keep going when everything around them screamed to surrender. But as they studied the battles carefully, they began to see the truth behind human strength. Humans had grown up on a dangerous world filled with storms that destroyed cities, wild animals that hunted at night, diseases that wiped out whole villages, and disasters that struck without warning. Their ancestors survived by adapting, by thinking quickly, and by staying strong even when everything seemed hopeless. This old, instinctive way of living still lived inside every human who now fought among the stars. Their bodies might have been weaker compared to other species, but their minds were sharp, fast, and built for chaos. Humans could see patterns in battle faster than computers. They could make decisions under pressure without freezing. Fear made them move quicker, not slower. Pain made them focus harder, not give up. And most of all, when one human figured out a new trick or tactic, every other human seemed to learn it instantly, spreading ideas like wildfire. The swarm could not understand this. Their strength came from numbers, from instinct, from ancient hunger. They had never faced a species that used creativity as a weapon. They had never met opponents who laughed in the middle of danger, who joked while repairing ships, or who sang before charging into battle. To the swarm, this behavior was unnatural, irrational. But to humanity, it was normal. On the command ship, Aria Mendez worked day and night, her fingers flying across the tactical screens as she adjusted plans, invented new formations, and predicted the swarm's next moves. She discovered weaknesses in their biological armor, and within hours human ships were already using that knowledge in battle. Commander Jace Relan, fighting on the front lines, noticed that the swarm hesitated in bright light, so he ordered his ships to fire massive flare bombs that blinded the enemy for precious seconds. An alien council would have debated this idea for days. Humans did it in minutes. On the planets where ground battles raged, ordinary men and women showed the same stubborn strength. A mechanic turned soldier unwound a heating coil to melt through a swarm warrior's armor. A medic used broken glass and a metal pipe to distract a monster long enough to save a wounded friend. A small group of farmers built traps from old tools and spare wires that stopped entire waves of swarm attackers. And the more pressure humans faced, the stronger they grew. It was as if hardship awakened something deep buried in their DNA, something powerful, something old. The galaxy watched in amazement as they finally understood the second reason humans were the scariest fighters in the galaxy. Humans did not break under pressure, they transformed. Every challenge shaped them. Every danger sharpened them. Every moment of fear made them stronger. And now the swarm, for the first time in its existence, felt something new in the air: uncertainty. They had crushed many worlds before, but never one like this. Never one filled with creatures who refused to surrender, who turned fear into fuel, and who learned faster than destruction could fall. Humanity was not just fighting. Humanity was rising. When the war reached its darkest point, the swarm set its sights on Titan Gate, the giant human defense station that hung in Saturn's orbit like a shining metal guardian. Titan Gate was more than a military base, it was the heart of Earth's defense, the place where fleets launched, where communications flowed, and where command decisions were made. If Titan Gate fell, Earth would be wide open and the swarm would sweep in like a storm with nothing to stop them. The day the attack came, the station was quiet, almost peaceful, as if the universe itself held its breath. Then the alarms exploded through every hallway, turning the soft hum of the station into a loud, shaking roar. People dropped what they were doing and soldiers sprinted to their stations. Engineers slid down ladders, medics grabbed their bags, and civilians rushed toward escape shuttles as red warning lights flashed along the walls. Commander Jace Relan and Aria Mendez stood together on the command deck, staring at the giant holographic screen showing the approaching enemy. A massive wave of hive ships, over 100, moved toward Titan Gate like a living shadow, each ship glowing with sickly green lights and covered in thick plates of armor that pulsed like muscle. The sight alone could make a heart freeze. But Jace only clenched his jaw and said, "This is where we stand." Aria nodded, her eyes steady. "We hold no matter what." The swarm attacked with unbelievable force. Beams of burning energy struck Titan Gate again and again, shaking the station until people had to grab walls to keep their balance. Human ships flew out like sparks, firing everything they had, but the swarm's numbers were overwhelming. Explosions lit up space like silent fireworks as ships from both sides shattered. Titan Gate groaned under the pressure, its metal skin bending inward from the constant hits. Still, humans did not fall back. They pushed forward, using every trick, every bit of knowledge, every scrap of courage they had. Some pilots flew so close to the hive ships that their wings almost scraped the enemy armor. Others used asteroid fragments as shields, hiding behind them until the last second before launching their own attacks. Inside the station, chaos filled the halls. A sudden breach ripped open one side of Titan Gate, sucking air and debris into space. Soldiers and crew scrambled as alarms shrieked. Among them was Lena, a young engineer barely out of training. When the pressure door jammed and refused to close, she grabbed a heavy cable with one hand and held herself in place while half her suit was torn by the vacuum. With her free hand, shaking but determined, she fired her welding tool at the edges of the torn door, forcing it shut just enough for the emergency seal to activate. Her vision blurred, her breath fading, but she survived. And her small act saved dozens of lives. Moments like that filled the station, ordinary humans doing impossible things in the middle of terror. Yet even with their willpower, the swarm kept pushing, tearing into Titan Gate's defenses with harsh, relentless hunger. But the swarm did not understand why humans kept fighting. They did not understand why humans risked their lives for each other, why they pushed beyond exhaustion, or why they refused to accept defeat. They did not know the human heart, the deep fire that lived inside it. And as Titan Gate burned, as human ships fell, as Jace and Arya rallied everyone again and again, something powerful became clear. Humanity would not let go, even when the world around them was collapsing. The swarm had crushed many civilizations before, but none had fought like this, none had bled like this, and none had held the line with such fearless strength. Titan Gate should have fallen within an hour. Instead, it stood for days. It screamed with metal and flame, but it did not break. Because humans did not break. And that unshakable determination was about to change everything. The war reached its most desperate moment when the swarm released their greatest monster, the Brood Titan. A massive biomechanical beast larger than mountains and powerful enough to break planets open like eggs. It moved slowly but with terrible purpose, drifting toward Earth as if nothing in the galaxy could stop it. Its enormous body was covered in living armor that pulsed with sick green veins, and its mouth glowed with the light of a weapon strong enough to tear a world in half. News of the Brood Titan spread quickly, and fear filled every corner of human space. Families on Earth looked up at the night sky, knowing something monstrous was coming. On distant planets, alien allies whispered prayers, hoping humans might somehow survive, though most believed this was the end. Even some human soldiers felt a cold fear settle in their hearts, but no one stepped back. Instead, humanity did something no other species would ever dare to do. They assembled every ship they had. Warships, old cruisers, small fighters, transport carriers, mining rigs, repair vessels, even cargo ships that had never seen battle. Pilots volunteered without hesitation. Old veterans returned to their ships. Young recruits who had never fired a weapon before strapped themselves into cockpits. Earth's skies filled with metal and fire as thousands of ships rose into orbit, forming the largest human fleet ever seen. Commander Jace Relan led the main strike force. Arya Mendez coordinated the entire battle from the command center, her eyes burning with determination as she balanced hundreds of moving ships at once. When the Brood Titan finally arrived in Earth's orbit, its shadow covered the stars, its roar shaking every ship nearby. The galaxy watched in silent horror. But humans didn't freeze. They attacked. Human ships swarmed the Titan like angry sparks, firing missiles, lasers, rail shots, every weapon they had, even when they knew it barely scratched the monster's hide. The Brood Titan swung its giant claws, smashing whole groups of fighters. It opened its mouth and fired its world-killing beam, slicing a path of destruction through human lines. But every time the Titan destroyed ships, more humans arrived, pushing forward, refusing to fall back. They fought not for conquest, but for home, for families watching helplessly below, for friends standing beside them, for the very right to exist. The swarm had never seen such stubborn courage. They never understood it. The Brood Titan grew more violent, tearing ships apart, swatting entire fleets away like small insects, but humanity only fought harder. Jace flew at the front, shouting orders through static-filled comms, his voice steady even as explosions shook his ship. "Stay focused. Stay close. We hit it together." Arya worked like she had fire in her veins, coordinating maneuvers with impossible speed, guiding ships into weak spots, predicting the Titan's movements with sharp instinct. As she watched the battle, she felt something inside her change. She knew humanity's strength didn't come from ships or weapons. It came from the hearts of the people fighting out there, people ready to give everything for a chance to protect their world. Desperation filled the fleet, but so did hope. And then came the most shocking moment of all. After hours of brutal fighting, Arya identified the Titan's true weakness, its firing core hidden deep inside the creature. But there was only one way to reach it. Humans had to fly straight into the monster's open mouth, through the beam that could kill a planet. No sane species would consider such a plan. But humans were not like others. They saw impossible odds and charged anyway. Jace gathered the remaining ships and formed a last attack group, knowing exactly what it meant. He opened a channel to the fleet and spoke with calm, steady resolve. "This is our home. We don't run. We fight." Then the human fleet turned and rushed toward the Titan's glowing mouth, engines burning like falling stars. It was a move so fearless, so reckless, that even the swarm hesitated with confusion. The fight changed in that moment. Humanity proved they would rather die fighting than watch their world burn. And the swarm finally began to understand the truth. Humans were not just brave, they were terrifying. They would do anything to protect what they loved. And that made them the most dangerous fighters the galaxy had ever seen. The days after the secret meeting felt different for everyone, because they all carried the feeling that something big had started to move around them, even though they could not fully understand what it was. And this made every small moment feel heavier, as if the air itself had a message hidden inside it. Aiden woke up early each morning, not because he was forced to, but because his mind refused to rest. And every time he looked out the window of the academy dorm, he felt as if the shadows outside were shifting a little too slowly, like something was watching him from far away. Even during training, his body moved through the drills, but his thoughts drifted back to the strange energy that had filled the old hidden room where the group had met. And he wondered if that moment had changed him more than he realized. Zara noticed first because she had always been good at reading people. And she kept watching Aiden with quiet eyes, trying to understand whether he was scared or simply preparing himself for whatever would come next. The others felt it too. The group was still united, but a thin invisible thread seemed to pull at each of them, reminding them that danger was not far and that every choice they made now mattered more than ever. One afternoon, when the sky turned a strange pale color, Aiden felt a sudden cold wind brush the side of his neck, even though there was no window open. And for a brief moment the world around him darkened, like someone had placed a veil over the sun. His heart raced as he looked around, but none of the other students seemed to notice, except for an old instructor who paused mid-step. stared at Aiden with narrowed eyes, and then quickly looked away, as if he had seen something he was not supposed to. Later that night, while the academy halls were silent, Aiden walked alone toward the common room, trying to clear his head, but the further he walked, the stronger the uneasy feeling became until he finally stopped, realizing he was being followed by a faint echo of footsteps that were not his own. He turned sharply, but the hallway behind him was empty, only filled with dim lights and long shadows stretching across the floor. His breathing grew heavy, and something inside him whispered that this was only the beginning, that his connection to whatever force was growing in the academy was becoming stronger each day. When he finally reached his friends, he tried to act calm, but Zara immediately noticed something was wrong and stepped closer, her voice soft but steady as she asked him what had happened. Aiden hesitated, afraid they would think he was imagining things. But when he told them, the room suddenly fell quiet, because each of them had felt something similar in the last few days' small moments where the world flickered. Sounds came from empty corners, or the shadows moved as if alive. They all realized they could no longer ignore it. Something powerful was awakening, something that had been waiting for them, watching them, maybe even guiding them without their knowledge. Aiden felt a mix of fear and courage rising inside him as he looked around at his friends, because he understood that they were now stepping into a path that none of them had chosen, but all of them were somehow tied to. The night outside grew colder, and a silent wind pressed against the windows, making the glass tremble slightly, as if warning them that everything they knew about the academy, about their lives, and about themselves was about to change forever.